Scaries doesn't even just happen on Sundays. It starts on Fridays when you're going into the weekend and already anticipating what you're going to feel on Monday, going back into work, the things that you're going to have to deal with. It's just this constant stress and anxiety that you aren't performing well, and you're constantly just in anticipation of the next worst thing.
Welcome to the Happy Engineer podcast, the place where we help engineers like you to build your career, balance your life, and be happy. I'm Zach White, former engineer turned lifestyle engineering coach, and your host for the journey to the career and life that you desire. Hey, I believe that you shouldn't have to sacrifice your life to reach your full potential at work. And what we're going to bring you in these conversations and interviews are the strategies, the tools, and the mindsets that are going to allow you to experience both success at work and success at home. Hey, we do the best we can to keep this free from advertisements. Of course, I can't control what YouTube may throw up, but do us a favor and share this podcast with anybody who you think may like it. And don't forget to click the bell and subscribe and get notifications to our YouTube channel and for upcoming releases of the Happy Engineer podcast. I would love your feedback, and even more than that, love your story. Share with us how these strategies and tools are working for you. Would love to be in touch with you. Connect with us on social media. Find me at Oasis of Courage on Instagram, Facebook, or Zach White on LinkedIn. It's an absolute pleasure to serve you. Now let's do this. Welcome back, Happy Engineers. It is always a pleasure. And today, no exception, as I'm here with my friend and a great coach, Camille Saltzman, and she has an unbelievable set of experiences and specialties that we can dig into today. But Camille, I want to start with one that may feel a little bit disconnected from the normal conversation on this podcast, and that's coffee. You are a self-proclaimed coffee snob. And those are not my words, those are your words. And I love that because I love great coffee. So please, Camille, tell us, what is the Camille coffee morning routine? I just want to hear about this so much.
Oh, yeah. So like I said in my bio, I moved to Seattle for a couple of years, and that's really where my snobbery really took off. And I guess my routine right now is I'm buying only local beans in LA. So I've got a couple of places that I really love that roast locally. And I now have a hand grinder, which I used to have an electric grinder when I was in Seattle, but it's in my storage unit right now that's there. So I have a hand grinder. So I hand grind my beans, and I use a Chemex. And I've been using a reusable filter for the Chemex, but it's not as good as a paper filter. I'm trying to not use as much paper for, environment, but I may have to go back to that. And I love the slow process of hand grinding my beans, put it in my Chemex, waiting for it to drip. There's, measuring out the beans, all that kind of stuff. And so it's a nice way to get started with my day. And I try and promote it with my clients also. Like, what's a slow way that you can start your morning? Have a cup of coffee in whatever way you want to do it. But yeah, that's my coffee routine these days.
I love that. So what is it about a slow process and really taking your time that's important to you?
I think something that I found from my own practice and that I try and share with clients is that I really never liked rushing in the mornings. Anytime that I would do that, just the rest of the day never felt good. And I found that with a lot of my clients, when they talk about their morning routine, they're like, especially with the work from home environment that a lot of us are in still currently because of COVID, they just wake up and then turn on their computer, don't have to think about taking a shower or anything like that. And that has really killed their drive, burnt out, all that kind of stuff, because they're not taking the time for themselves. And even if you're not a morning person, just like having a moment to do something for yourself, take your time to ease into the day is, I think, just so important and such a crucial way to flip the way the rest of your day is going to go.
I love this. And I really agree that the energy you start the day with impacts the rest of the day. And morning routines get a lot of conversation. There's a lot of perspectives out there, but maybe the engineering leader listening doesn't love coffee the way we do. But what would you encourage them to take away from this mindset for you? What are the most important pillars of a great morning, or how would they take action on this in a different way?
It's what I call small things, and it's always doing one very small thing that brings you joy. And one of the things, I was listening to a podcast about this, that all about ikigai, which is like a Japanese wellness, I guess, routine in some ways. And they talk about how starting it off early in the morning and doing something small that brings you joy in the morning kickstarts just your dopamine for the rest of the day, and then can help you be a bit more productive throughout the day. And so the guy on the podcast talks about every morning he'll have a small piece of chocolate because that is something that like brings him joy. Sometimes it's a matter of taking that long shower and taking your time when you take your shower and really enjoying the process. Just whatever it is that makes you feel really good. And it's small. It doesn't have to be this like workout. A lot of people tout these like huge morning routines, but just something really small that is your pleasure just for yourself that can really help you just throughout the day. And that's like really what the coffee practice is all about for me.
So simple, but really powerful. What
Yeah.
is something small and bite-sized that brings you joy, and give yourself the priority to have that? And I hear this from clients a lot, Camille, where they say, I don't have time for one of these fancy morning routines because I've got kids, I've got this, I've got that. And we have all of our excuses why we can't do the 2-hour 4 a.m. wake up, meditate, exercise, solve world hunger, and then go to work kind of morning routine. And
Yep.
this is a good perspective to say, look, whatever fits in for you, just take a few minutes for a small thing that sparks joy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
What do
Really
you think is
powerful.
your small thing in the morning?
Well, it is absolutely coffee as well. I love the first sip. I honestly don't even know how to put words to that moment when the coffee sits down. I sit down on the couch. I've got my book. I'm right there. And I take that first sip, and all is well in the world, Camille, is really is that for me. But
Yep.
if I'm in a situation where I don't get my coffee, then the secondary best part of my morning routine is the gratitude journal. I do that every day. It's just a moment to pause and
Yep.
identify a few things that I'm super grateful for. And I look forward to that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
You give me chills when you talked about the first cup, just by the way.
yeah, we're both
know
over here.
it.
We're going to need to pause this episode for a cup of coffee. Sorry, listeners, you're going to have to wait. So, okay, Camille, you're on a mission, and I love the work that you're doing right now to get people out of jobs that give them the Sunday scaries. You hear that phrase, and everybody gets it. Like, yes, I know what you're talking about. But just for the sake of understanding your experience and perspective around this, what is it really that you're talking about? What does it mean to you when you think about the Sunday scaries? What is that whole problem that you're seeking to solve in your mission in the world right now?
I mean, it is so related to the last job that I had before becoming a coach. It was a job that required a lot from me. I wasn't getting paid a ton. I wasn't being acknowledged for the work that I was doing, especially during COVID. Sunday Scaries doesn't even just happen on Sundays. It starts on Fridays when you're going into the weekend and already anticipating what you're going to feel on Monday, going back into work, the things that you're going to have to deal with. It's also waking up in the middle of the night, panicked about a work assignment, or that you've missed something, or that you're getting an email right now that you're going to have to deal with. It's conversations that you don't want to have. But it really is just this constant stress and anxiety that you aren't performing well, that you don't feel good about the work that you're doing, that you would rather be doing anything else. And you're constantly just in anticipation of the next worst thing. And that really was everything that I felt. It's what I see my clients go through currently when I think it's both about an unfulfilling job where they're not realizing their full potential, but then it's also the ways that companies treat people and that they don't acknowledge the hard work that people are doing in a pandemic, in the types of situations that we're in, working from home, kids, all that kind of stuff. And so it's just this like constant stress and pain that you're in. And that's how I define the Sunday scaries.
I imagine everyone listening had something in there that you just said that resonates for them either right now or in the past. If you don't, congratulations, you're in the minority. But something you said that really triggered for me is, we talk a lot about Sunday afternoon depression or the Sunday scaries, but for so many people, that actually begins affecting you Friday after work. You're already subconsciously dreading going back, and it's taking away from your whole life. You're not even enjoying the weekend at the level that you might want to. And it triggers so many other negative impacts. But Camille, what is it for you that you see with your clients or with the people who are in this constant state of low level anxiety or depression around work? Where does it show up first? What's the thing that actually causes somebody to realize, I have a real problem here, I need to take action?
Unfortunately, it happens when they're like past a point of really being able to deal with it on their own. It starts much earlier than when they actually come to me or come to you for help. It's for in the beginning, it's not feeling great about the work that you're doing, but then passing it off as like, oh, well, it's just work, or, you're kind of gaslighting yourself. Like, well, people don't really love their jobs anyway, so this is just what work is. And then sometimes I have clients who've gone a year, 2 years in that mental state. And then that's the breaking point of when they're like, oh my God, I can't live like this anymore. I'm not okay. And when they're at that point, they can't think about anything else. They can't even begin to think about, what do I want for myself? Because all they can really think about is just how helpless they feel in the situation that they're in, and just getting really hard on themselves, and then really resenting the work environment that they're in, where at one point maybe they could still see, oh, I still like my coworkers, or maybe some of the work's interesting, but then they really get to this point of, no, now I'm like angry about the work that I'm doing. And that's where it's really hard, because you've got to dig out of a lot of things when you're in that state of mind.
I wish it weren't true, but I
Yep.
agree with you that so often people wait until they're past a certain point of easy fixes and into really difficult places, in some cases permanent, whether it's health related, type 2 diabetes or divorce, or
Yep.
you name it. And I hate that when people have to get to that level before they take action. So
Yeah.
tell me, from your perspective, Camille, if someone's listening to this conversation and they're connecting and resonating with what you're describing, but maybe before today, never really put themselves in the category of someone who needs help, but they want to diagnose, like, am I on that trajectory and I need to take action before I hit that rock bottom moment? What would you encourage someone to do or to ask that would help shed some light on the reality of what direction you're going?
This is a great question, because Adam Grant, who does a lot of work in like leadership and organizations, talks about how people should take a hard look at the jobs that they are currently in, to see if there is a way that they can restructure the job before deciding to leave a job. And this doesn't work for everyone. There are plenty of people who are really just not okay. It's not a good work environment. But there are some people, like what you were just describing, a person who's like starting to ask questions, not really sure, are they on this path? And so really just taking a look at reevaluating, what do I want for myself? What am I looking for in my career? What are my strengths? Really looking at the strengths part of it, and even, ask friends, ask coworkers, like, what do you think my strengths are? And are you using those strengths on a daily basis? Because I think that's where a lot of people end up feeling really hurt in the jobs that they're in. It's because they realize that the things that they care about most, the values that they have, the really strong work ethics that they have, aren't being fully realized in the work, or the company is not recognizing them for those things. And so just mapping those things out and being able to put those things into words and saying, okay, is this environment working for me? And if it's not, like, are there ways that I can utilize those strengths a bit more? Are there ways that I can find those values in other parts of the company? Is the company treating me the way that I want? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So just really mapping it out.
That's really good. It makes sense. And it is something that we forget is even on the table, that you could retune or reshape right where you're at in a way that could open a whole new level of excitement and enthusiasm and connection to the work you're doing. And sometimes we just assume we're trapped, we're stuck inside the box that we're in. One thing that stood out to me, and we chatted a bit before we hit record for this conversation about it, and it's a bit of the other side, the hidden side of how these environments damage us in our lives and in our careers, that the conscious mind may think or associate certain things to what's going on. But when we're in this Sunday Scaries life, week after week after week, months or even years, it impacts the subconscious mind and the nervous system in a way that we may not have access to or really understand what's happening. And I know this is an area of expertise and genius for you, Camille. Can you talk to that a little bit for the engineer listening? Maybe you've never considered what's happening in your subconscious, and just tell us a bit about what's going on there and how it impacts us.
Yeah. So the subconscious is a huge part of our brain. People say it's anywhere between like 93 to 97% of the brain. And the other part of it is the conscious. So it's so small what we're actually conscious of and what we feel we're taking in. And part of the problem with the subconscious mind is that it is a sponge. It takes in all information from an early age, doesn't know how to filter it, and it just hangs out there. So things that happened to you when you were a kid, they're hanging out there. You may not even know. They're not memories that you're consciously aware of, but they're still dictating so many different parts of your life. And so this shows up in so many different ways. It shows up in, as you were talking about, over time, feeling like your job's not working for you, not feeling so good, all that kind of stuff. But it may even start from the beginning of when you've accepted a job and you feel like you should ask for more money, but don't know how to ask for more money when you're given a job offer. And maybe you have money mindset blocks. Like those are things that can be coming from something from when you were a child or somebody talked to you in a certain way. And so you haven't been able to build up that confidence. And that's where the practice that I do, RIM, which is regenerating images and memory, really comes in, because we dig into what's happening in the subconscious, use the imagination to bring shape to it, and pass through what that emotion is. Because a lot of it is just that moment is frozen in time and hanging out there and dictating things for us. And what we need to do is go through it like a tunnel and arrive at the other end of it and feel that sense of completion and realization. And then that can help us move forward in ways that we didn't expect.
Whoa. Big deep breath
stuff
here. This is really cool. So, knowing that for myself and for people listening, like, we may or may not have all the expertise, and you use some really new concepts, big words. I want to unpack this because I want to make sure the engineer listening, no, this is perfect. The curious engineer in me now, like, let's break it down. I want to understand this. So the engineer world that we live in, very logical, very focused on that 5% of the conscious mind, the thoughts that I have access to. So the whole notion that 95% of my world is being driven by a subconscious mind, maybe for some people, they've never actually even considered that. So just starting right there with this idea that the majority of the computing power of your brain is subconscious, and it's a sponge that's soaking up everything, whether you meant to or not, is a really, whoa, that's a compelling thought.
Scary.
What does that really mean in practice? Take me to a specific situation, maybe play it out. Like, how does that ongoing sponge of the subconscious mind affect us day to day, or how does it show up? What are the clues? I don't know. You take that whatever direction you want, Camille, but help us understand a little bit more of this interaction between the conscious and the subconscious.
It's hard for clues because it's things that we feel like are just totally normal of what we do with our day-to-day, how we interact with people. Sometimes it's maybe ways that you label yourself, like, oh, I'm a shy person, or, oh, I don't know how to express myself in certain ways. Those are things that over time have been maybe said to us when we were younger. Maybe it's just one interaction that happened when you were in high school and you don't even think about it, but it's still there. And it somehow is still dictating the way you take action every day, the way you interact with other people, the way you go about job and career satisfaction, or what types of job you go for. It plays out in so many different ways, but then when we can do work on it, it's things like, I just had a RIM session with somebody recently who had a memory of her parents going through a hard time, and her parents split up into two different cars, and she's in a parking lot. And she realized in that moment, when she was going through it, first, she hadn't thought about that memory in many years, but two, it was the first time that she saw her parents as being human and having flaws. And she was a young child in all of this. And it has dictated the way she has relationships with her parents, but also how she sees life in general, because she saw those flaws and she saw what adults can do, and she saw the effect that it can have on a child as well. But she hadn't been thinking about that for so long, and yet it still was showing up. She suddenly was piecing together so many things in her life that were related back to this moment when she was like 7 years old.
This is huge.
Yeah.
We spend, as engineers, most of our time focused on physics and chemistry and things that are driven by mathematics and equations and y equals f of x in the world around us. And what you're describing is what's happening in the world within us. And it's not physics. It's not this equals that. It's not always predictable. And the thing you said that's so powerful, I just want to highlight again, is that it's hard to find or discern in my conscious mind a clue about a problem or a block or a limit in my subconscious, because it's going to feel and seem totally normal to you. You may get that job offer and not negotiate for the money that you deserve. And you'll say to yourself, well, it's just because, I don't have confidence, or that's normal. Most people don't negotiate. It's cool. And you just accept that limit. When in reality, that behavior in that moment could be linked to some lack of self-worth from a memory in your subconscious mind that's impacting you all the time, and you're not seeing it. And this process of RIM is one of the tools that Camille and coaches like Camille use to help you discover it and create transformation. So I know we don't have time today to actually explain the neuroscience of RIM in its full glory, but can you just give us a little taste of like what happens? What is that transformation like in the subconscious when you go through the process?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that you get from it is the fact that your brain, as smart as it is, and there's so much that we still don't understand about the brain, and it's such an awesome thing that we get to have and study, doesn't know the difference between a memory or a thing that is happening currently in front of you and something that you are imagining just in your mind. So like if you were to close your eyes and imagine yourself on the edge of a cliff, your body would start freaking out as if you were actually on the edge of that cliff. And because of that, when we do RIM, part of the tool that you use is your imagination, and you start creating these new memories, these new neural pathways that can not replace, but just feel as strong as the actual memory that's been there. And while you're having these realizations, those realizations are really embedding themselves into you on like a cellular level, where they feel like they actually happen. And so then as you move forward, there's two parts to it. There is the actual realization where you're saying things to yourself, or you're saying somebody's telling you something, and they're very profound things. And then there's also the potential for a new memory to be created altogether. And those are things that you're going to remember beyond the RIM session itself. And as you move forward, then that can help now dictate the way you go about your life.
This is so cool. And could easily spend the rest of the day just digging into this.
I know, I love it.
The nerd in me is coming to the surface. But what I want to do, Camille, is maybe let's just pause that and say, hey, if you're curious, listener, to learn more about this, then we're going to give you a chance to connect with Camille. And there is a lot of power inside of subconscious transformation. And that's one of many things that great coaches can help you with, and I just want to leave it there for now, with this challenge to not accept normal as the end of what is possible for you. And there is absolutely power to unlock inside yourself through a process like RIM and the tools that Camille brings to the table. I want to touch another area though, because I love the voice and the message that you bring around career transition. And a lot of engineers in particular, because they've invested 4 years and a lot of money, or maybe 5 or 6 years and a lot of money, or a master's or a PhD or whatever into engineering, there's a sense of pressure that I have to stay in this track because I can't make this kind of money doing something else. And I spent all this time and I'm pot committed to this path and there's nothing else for me. And I'm 30 and it's too late or whatever. What is it that you would say to somebody who feels that it's too late to make a change in their career path?
I'm like the strongest believer in that it's never too late, because when you break it down into numbers for my engineers, if you are 30 and you are realizing maybe engineering is not the path for you, or you'd like to explore what else is out there, say you retire at 60, we'll say, sounds nice. That's a whole 30 years of a career that you can have that's completely different. And 30 years is like a really long time for a career to begin with. So you could even do 2 different careers in that time span. But really the message for me is, if you spend somewhere between 40 to 55 hours a week doing something, you want to love it. You want to do something that feels good. And I don't believe that everybody has to love their job. I understand if that's not for you, but at least not dreading the everyday, not hating what you have to do all the time. If you're wondering what else is out there, just start exploring what else is out there that might fulfill some of the strengths that you have. But really it is about, don't just stick to this because it's what you've done so far and you are not too old to make a switch. There are plenty of people who are doing it all the time, and that means that you can also.
I love that. Camille, in the spirit of how, so I'm with you. I want to change my career path. Maybe the engineer listening has just been waiting for you to give them permission to be able to change. And it's like, you can do it. It's never too late. What do you actually encourage somebody to think about as the first step? Is it just quit your job and go? Is it start building skills in a new area? Where would someone begin if they connect with what you just said?
I mean, if you are somebody who is crying every day before work, I want to say quit your job and go. But, I know not everybody's in that type of situation. It's scary. But yeah, if you're in that level of job situation, quit your job and go.
All right. So if you're crying before work every day, call Camille after this episode and quit your job and let's go.
Exactly. Let's get to work.
But okay. But what else? If maybe it's not that extreme.
No, if it's not that extreme and you're really just wondering what else is out there, could I have had a different life as a graphic designer or whatever? One of the things that I love giving as a tool to clients and just to anyone in general, what did you love doing as a kid? That's like a huge starting point to me. What did you love doing as a kid? Because a lot of it can inform what it is that we need today to feel fulfilled, right? Like if you were somebody who was playing with dolls all the time and wanted to care for those dolls and that kind of stuff, maybe you need to do something where you care for people more on a day-to-day basis. Maybe you were painting a lot as a kid and you were super crafty, and the job that you have currently is not very creative in that way. And so, maybe it's a matter of just introducing a hobby of painting again, and that will make you feel better. But just taking a quick look at like when I was younger, maybe up until like the high school days, like what brought you joy on a day-to-day basis, and just kind of start from there.
I think that's brilliant. Simple action to take. Set aside some time. Go back to your childhood years and ask, what brought me that happiness and joy then? And just compare. Was what you're doing today connecting to that same part of you? Or if there's a big disconnect, it just is information you can use to decide how to move forward. And I want to repeat something you said, because I don't think I've ever heard somebody say this, Camille, and it's really powerful. You don't have to love your job. And even for me, the message at Awaco often, this idea of whole life balance and fulfillment and purpose, sometimes gets misconstrued into I must have this deep, loving, passionate connection to work, or I'm broken, or I've failed, or something's wrong. And I just appreciate so much that you're bringing that, like, hey, this isn't about what's right or wrong. It's just about what you want to do. And
Yeah.
if you're totally fulfilled with crying before work every day, like,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. If that's your authentic choice, I think maybe the challenge to you is that subconscious block and just what has been normal for you for a long time, accepting something that's not actually what you desire. So
Yeah,
that's
no, that's a perfect like bring back to that. But yeah, I mean, I used to have this conversation with friends all the time because I was somebody who was like, no, I want to feel fulfilled in the work that I do. I want my passion to match my job. That's really important to me. But then I also saw the other side of it of people who were like, I like my job. And these are people who are in job situations that are really great. Like they have great benefits. They partially enjoy the work that they're doing every day, but it's not like their big passion. Their job just helps pay for the passion that they do on the weekends, whether it's rock climbing or biking or whatever it is. That job just feeds into that, and that's how they feel fulfilled. And so yeah, the message of you don't have to love your job, but what's really important is at least just feeling supported and like you're being creative every day and that you're using your strengths and that you don't feel like you're just wasting away at a desk every day.
yeah.
That
Yep.
doesn't work.
Yeah. If your career is a big minus
Yeah.
in your life, I really believe you got to take a hard look at that. But
Yeah.
I really appreciate your perspective on that, Camille.
Mhm.
Hey, in the interest of time, I'd love to keep going because
I
again, you've
know.
kind of nerded me
Love
out here,
chatting with
but
you.
I want to land the plane. And I always finish with this same question, and I'm super excited to hear where you take this. But the truth is, great engineering is like great coaching in that questions lead and answers follow. And if you want to be happy and fulfilled in life, we want to ask great questions. So, Camille, what's your perspective? If the engineering leader listening wants to be happy and fulfilled, what is the best question you would lead them with today?
Well, it's interesting because it's brought back to the looking at your past kind of thing, because I do believe in that. I believe that we have all of the answers in us. It's just a matter of digging through. And so I think if you're in a place where you're asking yourself questions about your career or wondering whether engineering is still right for you, just asking like, what brought you to engineering in the first place? And just looking back on that and just wondering what drew you there, what got you going, write a letter to yourself and just talk about what are the things that brought you there first, and is your current engineering situation in line with what brought you there in the first place.
Can you describe that letter to yourself exercise really quick?
Mm-hmm. There are tough moments in our lives, and when we make a career shift, it can be tough, especially job searching is just such a pain these days and can be really disheartening. And the letter to yourself is to remind you of what it is that you're here for. So it is just asking again that what brought you to engineering, and really try and put yourself in that mindset. Just take a quick moment, put yourself in that mindset of the day that you decided you were going to study engineering in school, or maybe it was in high school at some point, or did somebody tell you that this would be a good career path for you? And when you made that decision, what did you feel like you were going to get out of it, and what did you want to learn? Like what was your mission in doing this, and
super
just
cool.
writing it all out.
Would you encourage someone to write that from the perspective of present day me writing to present day me, or is it 22-year-old me when I graduated from college writing to present day me, or 80-year-old rocking chair version of me? How would you frame the perspective of that letter?
Mm-hmm. I would do it as your younger self. So really just, like I said, putting yourself back in those shoes of where you were back then and trying to remember all of those things and writing it to your present self.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm excited by this. I'm totally going to do it.
Yay!
Camille, thank you so much for just the insights and your generosity in this conversation to share so many interesting, nerdy tips and actionable tips and things that our engineers can start to soak in. But I know people are going to want to hear and connect with you more. So can you just share with the listener, if they want to reach out and get some more information about you and your work and your coaching, where should they go?
Find me on Instagram at Camille Saltzman and reach out, DM. Doesn't matter if you're interested in doing work together. If you want to ask more questions about RIM, I'm always open book to talk about all things career, coaching, life, whatever. So at Camille Saltzman on Instagram.
Perfect. So we'll put that and all the other links and places you can find Camille and her resources and her coaching programs on our website in the show notes at oasisofcourage.com, where you always go. And engineers, I really do encourage you, please connect with Camille. She's a fantastic coach. She has some incredible tools to help you get into that 95% that you're, let's face it, blind to in your subconscious. So I really encourage you to do that. And Camille, thanks again for making time for being with us today.
I love this conversation.
Hello, my friend. Zach White here again. And I wanted to let you know that's all we've got for this episode of the Happy Engineer podcast. Thank you so much for investing your time with me today. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to bring you this content. Just as a reminder, it would be amazing if you would subscribe and share this episode with any other engineers you know who may benefit from this. And if you're like me, I hope that you'll take some notes and, more importantly, take action. In our audio version of the podcast on Apple Podcasts and any place that you go to find podcasts, there's a little more content from me about this episode in the debrief. If you really want to hear about how to put this into action, I'd encourage you to go grab that. But thank you for joining us for the video version of our interview today. And again, can't thank you enough for helping us to get the word out about the Happy Engineer podcast and what we're doing. If there's any way we can serve you, would love to do that. Go find us at oasisofcourage.com or reach out to me on social media at Oasis of Courage. And don't forget again to subscribe and click the bell to have notifications of upcoming releases of new episodes of the podcast. As always, I want to leave you with this. If you stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. So let's crush comfort, create courage, and let's do this.